it's Phil. I'm back on the show. I'm here with Skye Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Skye.
Friends.
Hi, Skye. How are you?
Is this our last show of 2014?
This is the last show of 2014. Yeah, we're doing this. This will be out the week of Christmas, and then we're taking the next week off, so there will not be a new show the week after Christmas. You can go back and listen to an old show, or just talk amongst yourselves.
Or this one will be so potent, it'll have the concentrated humor and insight
Listen
of
to
two
this
shows.
one twice.
Yeah.
Listen to this one twice. I'm also here with Theon Hill.
How are you, Phil?
I'm good. How are you, Theon?
I'm chilling.
Nice to have you on the show. Theon is a professor at Wheaton College, associate professor of communication. Just started this year.
Yes, indeed.
You're new,
I am.
and so far so good.
We're living.
We are living. You can quote him on that. Okay, theme song. Here it comes. We were going to do Mr. Nezzer in honor of him no longer being in VeggieTales. So Mr. Nezzer singing to us from the great beyond.
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. And lend an ear. The Phil and Skye podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Skye and Theon Hill, because he's right here with Skye and I and Bill. Thank you very much. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil and Skye podcast starts right here. The Phil and Skye podcast starts right here.
I missed, but I was really close.
All right.
Okay. Okay, we got a few stories, and then we have Theon on for a bigger, heavier topic. Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Did you know it's Christmas week? Almost.
Almost.
When this comes out.
Do they even know it's Christmas?
Do they know it's? That was a great.
It was wonderful.
That was
Feed the World.
Yeah, it
wasn't
was Feed the World.
Yeah.
That was Bob Geldof's thing.
1984?
Yeah, something.
Year
like
before I was born.
Yeah. Oh,
He's a youngin'.
really? No.
85.
Wow.
He was born in 85.
Last time the Bears won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh, that's when I was listening to Steve Taylor in Bible college.
85. I mean, that's after the 84 Olympics. That's after the 84 election.
You missed the 84 Olympics.
That was after, like, Beat It and Thriller and
In
everything.
fact, you probably missed everything that happened in 84.
I actually did.
Just the Olympics.
He was born the year that Back to the Future came out.
I don't regret that.
That was 1985. That's amazing.
Okay, Christmas. And because it's Christmas, that means we need to talk about our atheist and Satanist friends.
Yes.
Do they know it's Christmas time?
I think they do.
The answer is yes, they do. Atheists, every year, they like to put up billboards, antagonistic billboards, and we got a fun one this year.
We should make it clear this is not all atheists. These are angry atheists.
A subset of atheists.
Let's not
yes,
paint with
and
a
not
broad
all
brush.
Jews killed Jesus.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome. And not all atheists put up billboards. But the ones that we're discussing put up billboards.
Right.
Okay. American Atheists, specifically, which is an organization of atheists that like to put up billboards. They put these billboards up in cities in the South, which is kind of fun.
The Bible Belt.
The Bible Belt. The billboards show a child wearing a Santa hat with pen in hand, writing a letter to Santa that reads, "Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is to skip church. I'm too old for fairy tales." Isn't that cute?
No kid says that to Santa Claus. There are far better things to ask for than skipping church.
You think someone's projecting
A little bit.
to their kids? So some people in the South are a little cranky about it, as you can imagine. The spokesperson for the American Atheists said, "It's just drawing the conclusion by looking at the parallels. We can all stop pretending. We can stop dragging ourselves to church every year." Theon, you have permission to stop dragging yourself to church.
Thank you. I've been looking for that for a long time.
You are welcome. Every children knows churches spew absurdity, which is why they don't want to attend services.
That's why they don't want to go.
That's why I didn't want to go.
Oh, I've been trying to figure that out for so long.
Yeah.
They're actually paying attention and they disagree with what the pastor's saying. That's why kids don't want to go.
Today's adults have no obligation to pretend to believe the lies their parents believed. It's okay to admit that your parents were wrong about God.
Wait a minute, all this is on a billboard?
No, this is the spokesman, the head of the American
Because
Atheists.
they need help with their marketing copy.
Being interviewed. No, the billboard was just the kid saying, please, Santa, can I skip church this year? Then my life will be happy.
Isn't there an irony in that billboard? Because I'm too old for fairy tales, but he's writing
to
to Santa.
Whoa. It's internally inconsistent.
It is.
Just a tad.
There's no logic there. Please, Santa. Wow, that's very interesting. Yes. So some people are, of course, a little bent out of shape, but that's kind of the point, right? I mean, why would you put that billboard up in Memphis, Tennessee, if you didn't want to,
Bend some people out of shape.
Yeah, bend some people's shapes. But a local church has put up a billboard in response.
I love billboard wars. I think that needs to be a new series on Discovery or something.
Billboard wars?
Yeah.
The leaders of Grace Church in Alma, Arkansas, are putting up a billboard near the atheist one in their town saying, "Questions, doubts, and curiosity, all welcome at Grace Church." That's nice. That's not bad. Okay. So you okay with that?
No, it's better than I expected.
How about the Satanists? Do you know what the Satanists are doing for Christmas
Yeah,
this
I
year?
think they're in Florida, aren't they?
Yeah, in Florida. It's our old friend, Lucian.
We really need to have him on the podcast.
Lucian Greaves.
Lucian
Do you know who Lucian Greaves is?
I've not come across him before, no.
He's the head of the Satanist temple, the
Okay.
Satanic temple.
I'm pretty sure he looks exactly like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
I was thinking Snape from Harry Potter
That too. That's just on the weekends.
when he dresses up.
Right.
Yes. So Florida's
his black mask.
Florida's capital will have a new holiday decoration this year. The Satanic Temple will be among its nativity scenes and secular presentations. There will be a Festivus pole. The Festivus.
Are they also going to
the
have
rest
the
of us.
leg lamp from Christmas Story?
That would be awesome.
Because now they're pulling items from pop culture.
They last year the Satanic Temple's display was rejected because it was deemed grossly offensive. This year it got accepted. The approved display will have a banner with the phrase "Happy Holidays from the Satanic Temple" atop a diorama of an angel falling into hell.
Wow.
What was it last year? What got
I
rejected?
don't know if it's the same thing or something.
Was it like a child falling into hell or a
different.
dog or something?
I don't know. So Lucian Greaves said via email, "We hope that this holiday season everyone can put their religious differences aside and respect the celebratory spirit of responsible hedonism available to all."
That's
Isn't that an oxymoron?
Responsible hedonism.
Oh, my. It's as real as it gets.
responsible hedonism.
So you're an expert in rhetoric, right?
Yes, not that kind, but yes.
What would you advise them?
How's their rhetoric doing?
Not so good. You're not drawing us in.
No, it's
So I was downtown this weekend
yes. You were downtown.
at Daily Plaza where they do the Christmas market and all that, and they
Yeah.
had the life-size nativity scene,
Okay.
and then a few feet to the west was a very large menorah, and right in between,
You mean a holiday candlestick
no, it was a menorah,
next to the holiday tree
whatever.
and the holiday
in between
the holiday manger scene?
the manger scene and the menorah was
Yes.
a very large illuminated red letter A
Hey, yeah, I saw that last
that was
year.
put up by an atheist group.
Yeah.
And it had there was a sign there posted saying it was there to celebrate the winter solstice, and to remind us all that we don't have to believe in, I don't know what the exact quote was, something ridiculous fairy tales this time of year. I expected the little sign to end with "bah humbug." It was just one of
Right.
these like "bah" on all of you, and it was a really ugly.
Do you remember the quote on it?
I wrote it down.
I know you wrote it down.
because I put it in my devotional.
Yeah, you put it in your devotional.
Yeah.
It was religion hardens hearts.
Right.
And closes minds.
Something like
I
that.
believe. I mean, it was just,
Yeah.
let's just take a bat at other people's beliefs.
Exactly. I mean,
And that's where there's a difference between we want to open this display to all religious holiday traditions versus we're now making this a free speech zone.
right. Like, what if the menorah had a sign that said, the New Testament is a crock?
Yeah, Jesus was
And
not
what
the
if the
Messiah.
manger
It's a
scene
lie.
said, "Isn't it terrible that the Jews killed this little baby?" Like that just to deliberately stick it to some other religion. But that's essentially what the atheist display does. Is it says to everyone else,
Which you can do under free speech grounds,
Right.
But that has to be the reason that it's being opened up.
It's not very neighborly though.
Because the Satanic Temple doing a diorama for Christmas of an angel falling to hell has nothing to do with the season. So that's not saying we want.
You don't know what season Satan fell.
Did he
although-
land in snow?
I'm pretty sure it was the fall.
It was the fall.
You get it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Bill, can you hit the hi-hat on that one? Yeah, why don't we have that? I think it's tricky because people are stuck with, are we opening this up to every holiday tradition versus, which I think is absolutely, versus, for there to be a nativity scene here, that means this needs to be a free speech zone, so anyone can make whatever political statement they want.
About anyone else.
About anyone else. So
Right.
you could, put up something about, the Zionists of Israel.
Right,
And
or
how
what
they're
about a
killing-
neo-Nazi sign about, or KKK thing, or free speech is free speech, right? You can go.
Why can't we just say holidays? I mean, it has to be something involving the fourth quarter.
Well, that's why I think the one
a-
in Chicago specified this is to celebrate the winter solstice, was what they said. I think they're trying to make that into a holiday.
The atheist group in Florida also plans a poster that says, "Celebrate the true meaning of Christmas," and offers random words that include charity, family, Rockettes, hot chocolate, and Chinese food.
Wow.
Yeah, and the spaghetti monster is also making an appearance.
The spaghetti monster.
I kind of love the spaghetti monster in the Florida State Capitol building. More often associated with opposition to the introduction of creationism and intelligent design as science in public schools than the year-end holidays, but last year was represented by a pile of shredded paper on an office chair.
What does that mean? That was the display?
Yeah,
An office chair with shredded paper?
because it looks like spaghetti.
Why didn't they just have a spaghetti display?
Because it wouldn't last.
Well, they could have made a fake one,
It'd be a mess.
and they could have maybe put it on a drone so it flies.
This is just
Shredded paper was easier.
This is just making me laugh because you imagine going into the state capitol, the rotunda, and typically what you'd see in Christmas time would be Christmas trees and it'd be beautiful, and then there's an office chair with paper, shredded paper on it, and there's a cheap diorama of an angel falling into.
So do you think they have a secret agenda here, which is if they can keep proliferating these really horrible displays, eventually somebody in government's just going to say, enough's enough.
No more nothing.
We're done with all of it.
Right.
Is that their hidden agenda
I
here?
think that's the goal.
Yeah.
The goal, because it's not, this is a great way to promote our point of view.
Right.
It really is about, we believe this is wrong, and to protest. So those are all protest votes.
Right.
The ultimate irony is, of course, Lucian Greaves doesn't believe in Satan.
Right.
No one in the Satanic Temple believes in Satan. It's more of a political thing.
The problem is their methods really go about the worst way possible, rhetorically speaking. Your goal is not to get us fed up. Your goal is to change the meaning of the symbol.
Right.
If you want to change Christmas, if you want to diminish it, just feed into the consumerism that surrounds it. That'll be a much better way of getting us not to care about it anymore.
But then what are Christians going to do? Because that's our job.
Oh, you take that back. We do not feed into the... Tell him, Theon. We do not. We all have a pure view of... What are you saying?
All right, I wrote a piece a while ago, I think it's up on my blog now, that talks about the history of Christian attitudes toward Christmas.
Yeah. Is this about mega churches and their Christmas spectacles?
No. It's about how...
Have you seen my new Christmas spectacles? I'm holding my glasses. Get it, kids?
This is becoming a bad pun
Sorry.
podcast.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Theon.
So, like 100 years ago, a lot of Christian, if you survey, I think there was the New York Times who did a survey of sermons at Christmas time, and a great many of them 100 years ago were all railing against the consumerism that was infecting early 20th century American religion around this time of year. And there was a call for people to not go to the stores, not buy all the junk, not engage in all of it. And now...
when was this?
100 years ago. Not even, 1920s,
Okay. So 100
1930s.
years ago, stop all that shopping. Got it.
And focus on the pure message of the season. And now you look at, over the last number of years, this whole war on Christmas rhetoric that Fox News and other groups are really pushing. And the argument is, we're going to be offended if you don't do your consumption in December in the name of Jesus. Because if you say Happy Holidays, well, you're not...
When I'm buying toys.
That's right. You should be able to go to a superstore and be told that you're buying all this junk in Jesus' name, otherwise we're going to be offended. So the shift in 100 years has been remarkable.
Right.
From critiquing the consumerism to demanding it only be done in Jesus' name.
Yeah.
That's what's happened, which is really, I think, ironic, but...
And tragic.
Yeah. So if the atheists start saying, yeah, go for it and spend all the money you can and do it in God's name, then...
So speaking of atheists, our friend, our favorite atheist, friend of the show, Peter Boghossian.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been on the show. professor at Portland State University. So, and we've had this ongoing battle over defining the word faith.
Right.
You know, because on the atheist side, faith is pretending to know things you don't know or that can't be known. Or people believing things without evidence, and then I've and others have said, no, that's not the biblical definition of faith at all. You've got it all wrong. So he sent me he retweeted a Joel Osteen tweet this week.
Oh, that's not fair.
Well, he sent it to me personally to say, this is what I'm talking about. How can you say this isn't how Christians use the word faith? So you want to hear the Joel Osteen tweet from this week? Mm-hmm. Don't let the facts fool you. When you believe, all things are possible. Choose faith in spite of the facts. Joel Osteen. So
Choose faith in spite of the facts.
yes. Now
That's a bumper sticker.
Beyond, do you have anything you'd like to say?
We got an expert in rhetoric here.
Yes. How's that communication?
How is that supposed to be taken? I mean, that.
Here's what I think he means. Here's what I think, and I tried to explain this to Peter. First of all, I said that Joel Osteen is not one of our more renowned theologians, just so you know. But
He never even went to like Bible school, did he?
I don't think so. He went to, didn't he go to Bob Jones, or did he go to?
He did not go to Bob Jones.
Okay, because you would have seen him.
Possibly.
Okay. You know everyone who went to Bob Jones?
No, I really didn't.
Okay.
No.
Just checking. Because what I think he's probably saying, because Joel Osteen is not an apologist. He doesn't address, how do we deal with facts? How do we deal with knowledge? I think what he's probably trying to say is don't let the circumstances in your life change what you believe God is going to do. I think that's actually what he's trying to say. So if you believe God is going, and now the application may be wrong. If you believe God is going to heal you, if you believe God is going to turn your life around, if you're presented with evidence that would be impossible, don't let the evidence change what you believe God is going to do. So I think it's kind of, pop Christian self-help believe what you believe is true. And
it sounds like he's riffing on Hebrews, where faith is the evidence of things not seen, assurance of things not seen. But that's not the same as saying there's no evidence.
No,
Right.
It's not. And I don't think he's talking about facts
in
the sense that
It's defined.
yes, or faith, and necessarily in the sense that it's defined.
How about?
So I had a little back and forth.
I think you need to do a little
Peter.
bartering.
Bartering?
with Dr. Boghossian.
Okay.
And
What are we bartering? Can I end up
think-
with a chicken?
I think it's almost like an inverse draft, where you need to come to an agreement where you can disavow. Ooh, I just spit out an M&M. You can disavow some Christian from your side, and he can disavow some atheist. Like, you won't ever use another atheist quote from fill in the blank against Dr. Boghossian if he promises never to cite this Christian fill in the blank as an authority on Christianity.
But he would point out a couple of things. Number one, the massive following that Joel Osteen has.
Yes.
However many, hundreds of thousands. And also, he believes that the Christians that he has spoken to, there's a truck going by the studio, I don't know if you can hear that, probably delivering my Christmas presents. It's Santa. But he also believes that in interactions he's had that he would describe with thousands of Christians, this is how they use the word faith.
Well, I would sadly probably agree with him.
Well, that doesn't really help me at all.
No, it doesn't. I think what he's reacting to is pop Christianity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think what he's reacting to is actually Orthodox Christianity.
Okay.
So that's the difference. If you want to argue with him and quote every person who claims to be an atheist and every ridiculous thing they've ever said, I'm sure he wouldn't be too happy about it either. And he would want you referencing thoughtful, intelligent, educated, philosophical atheists.
Right. But what if they're not intelligent, educated, or thoughtful atheists, but they have millions of followers?
There's some of those too, I'm sure.
So that was Joel Osteen's post from December 14th, and then he tweeted again on December 18th, and again, Peter forwarded this to me, because here's Osteen again. Don't let the facts talk you out of it. Choose to believe what God has put in your heart. And that kind of, and he was saying, see.
This has as much resemblance to biblical Christianity as the flying spaghetti monster does.
To what?
To biblical Christianity.
To the actual history of the flying spaghetti monster.
That's right.
Okay.
So
yeah, but what percentage of North American Christians do you think
Can I throw in a red herring? I mean, not a red herring. Can I
Yes.
throw in a rhetorical term here?
Yes.
This is kind of like an ad hominem attack. I mean, like a straw person attack.
Okay.
You're attacking the weak arguments of your opponent's position.
Yes.
I mean, Joel Osteen is the weak, not a theologian,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily who I would go to as the defender of the faith. So to attack Joel Osteen, I might agree with you. It's a horrible articulation of what I believe. But to me, this is very similar to like a post-colonial critique of American missions. They were all colonizers. Well, some were. But that doesn't mean that's what Christianity is inherently. It's not inherently imperial. This is the same argument with Joel Osteen.
Well, you could throw it right back at him and say, well, Stalinist Russia executed 30 million people, and he was an atheist. So therefore, atheism is an inherently violent and evil worldview.
Yeah, I don't think he'd like that.
No, he wouldn't.
I don't think that would go over very well. But what do you do about the number of Christians who have bought into kind
That's
of the
why we're here,
pop
Phil. That's why
psychology?
we're doing this
You think
show.
we should do a podcast
Yeah,
about that?
we're gonna win them all back.
See, I actually told Peter that, the good news is that Lakewood Baptist Church, Joel Osteen's church, is currently using what's in the Bible as their Sunday school curriculum, where I spend quite a bit of time defining the word faith. So those kids at his church are going to get the correct
Well, maybe Joel should
view
sit in on some of those
of
Sunday school
faith.
classes.
Hey, you are going too far, pal.
No, I'm saying it's good content.
Hey, okay. It is time to. Oh, the last thing I wanted to mention before we go to Theon. The Sony scandal.
I love it.
The Sony scandal.
I think this is fascinating.
Yes.
Sony was hacked, and the hackers. Have you heard how much data they sucked out of Sony?
It's like what's it called? A trilobite?
100 terabytes.
Terabytes.
100 terabytes of data.
Yeah.
How could you even pull that much data out without anyone noticing, like, hey, I can't watch anything on Netflix. What's going on our network right now?
I don't even know how much data that is.
So it's 1,000 gigabytes are in a terabyte.
This is not
1,000
helpful.
megabytes are in a gigabyte.
Whatever.
A song is about, what is that, 3 or 4 megabytes?
A song is about a megabyte.
But a terabyte is how many
100
gigabytes?
1,000.
Whatever.
That-
I don't.
Especially when you're
lot.
talking about emails and stuff.
Yeah.
An email is 50 kilobytes.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Is this the metric system?
no, but kind of.
Yeah.
No.
So
And so they pulled the movie.
I just before we came
pulled
into the studio,
the movie.
we're recording this on Friday the 19th.
Yeah, Friday the 19th.
President Obama was doing a press conference at the White House before
Yeah.
heading out on vacation, and the first question they asked him is, "Do you think Sony made the right decision in pulling the movie from theaters?"
Yeah.
And he said no, they did not make the right decision.
Yeah.
And he's come out and said, we can't allow these dictators to determine,
Right.
this we do with free speech and so it does really. I mean, does this empower more crazies around the world
I
to
know.
threaten?
And George Clooney is up in arms about
well, now
it.
you're in trouble.
Do you know why George Clooney is up in arms about it? Because when the heads of Sony came under attack for the things in their emails and for their response to it, he circulated a petition to support them. Like, they're doing their jobs, they're doing their best, we're standing with them, and he couldn't get anyone else to sign the petition. No one would sign on to agree that we're supporting them. So basically, Hollywood wanted to just hang him out to dry. Say,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know, I'm not touching that. He says Hollywood is cowardly.
Well, this isn't the first time this has happened.
What are you talking about?
Well, this is going to get us into some trouble. Maybe we'll have a tax on our show. But there is an interesting pattern going on that
Theon, do you want to be the new co-host after Skye is taken out?
we have kind of two categories of people. There are of offended people. There are people that we don't mind offending because we know they're not going to hurt us, and then there's people we really are afraid to offend because they might hurt us. So
Yeah.
you see,
Right.
obviously in certain
Book
Muslim
of Mormon, no problem.
No problem.
Right.
We can offend the heck out of Mormons because what are they going to do?
Right.
Muslims, at least certain types of fundamentalist Muslims, you don't go anywhere
you
near
gotta
that.
respect their beliefs.
Exactly.
They have different beliefs.
And now we've learned that apparently the dictator of North Korea,
He falls in that category.
when he makes a threat, he gets what he wants. And so I think it's bad on so many levels because, number one, yes, it is an infringement on American values and
Right.
freedom of speech. But secondly, it not only empowers bullies, but it tells people who do hold strong beliefs that if you really want the world to respect you, you have to be violent about it. You can't just hold your convictions
Right.
and not fight.
It also kind of gives a glimpse into the future of terrorism.
Yeah.
Because they did more I mean, there's no place on the Sony campus where you could have put a bomb that would have done as much financial damage as this. You know, it's estimated about $100 million at least that they will lose because of this. And the ability for terrorist organizations or you know, the heads of states of rogue nations to take out opponents without ever having to lift a finger. It's just you type some code and you take down a bank.
But I think there's one thing here. I mean, if North Korea produced a movie about them trying to assassinate Barack Obama,
Yeah, well, we wouldn't like it.
I'd be upset. I mean, now I don't. There is the bullying component as well, but the
But
fact
if
that
it was a lighthearted comedy,
but the fact that we're laughing about that, like, oh, they're killing him, that'd be horrible.
did they actually kill him in the movie? No one,
I don't know.
I
haven't seen the
actually,
movie.
I heard yesterday that a clip escaped onto the internet.
Yeah.
Of the scene in which, what's his name?
Franco or
No,
Seth?
the dictator.
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un actually gets killed in the scene. I didn't see it. I heard about it on the radio. The scene is he's in a helicopter,
Yeah.
and a rocket fires and blows up the helicopter while he's in it. To the backdrop music of Firework by Katy Perry, done in a very slow kind of melodic.
Okay.
So it's very tongue-in-cheek and very funny. But
Well, did you hear about the theaters that tried to show Team America?
yeah, that got pulled
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and then that got pulled. Paramount didn't want to give them prints.
So everyone's
to show.
scared.
Everyone is scared.
Yeah.
Hollywood
But
is
the flip
scared.
side is they're thinking if we run these movies and there is an attack of some kind, are we going to be held
scapegoated.
liable for
Right.
it? And no one wants
Right.
the liability.
Right. So what about, say, filmmakers any filmmaker that promotes points of view in their work that may be deemed unpopular? Like, say, the Bible. If you made films about teaching the Bible and then that becomes more and more unpopular in our culture, what does it open up you to in terms of bullying and, you know, oh, we don't want to carry that because somebody threatened to, you know,
Well, this was Bill
blow
Maher's,
up a Walmart.
Bill Maher's point about liberals are inconsistent because
Yeah.
they're not standing up for truly liberal ideas like freedom of speech. They just capitulate to whoever threatens them. And
That's
so
terrible.
yeah, it's not setting a good precedent, and
That's terrible. Okay.
I weep for Hollywood.
Do you really? This Christmas, let's all shed a tear for Hollywood because they're falling on hard times, and some of them may not have the Christmas presents that they had last year.
All right, we should really talk about something more
Theon,
important.
Hello.
Why are you here? Oh, I remember.
Oh, good, because I sure didn't.
Okay, so we've had a couple of listeners write in and say, "Hey, you haven't talked about Ferguson. You haven't talked about Trayvon Martin. You haven't talked about any of these issues that have been popping up over the last few months." And primarily, like, well, Skye and I, I mean, he's Indian a little.
Half.
He's half Indian, but it just we don't have the credibility to talk about those things. You gave a talk at Wheaton College a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, December 4th.
December 4th, all about that, and I thought, okay, this is someone who's developed a firm point of view that can also bring a perspective that I obviously can't bring. I was born in Iowa. It's just not.
He can't even legally do Mr. Nezer's voice anymore.
I know. That's how offensive I am. But you gave this talk, and I was listening to it, and it was pretty compelling. And you wanted to talk about three things dealing with Ferguson and how we view it. One was the reality of systemic racism. The other one was the role of personal responsibility, and then finally what the church can do about it.
Right, yes.
And I thought that was valuable. So let's start at the beginning. When you see all this stuff, when you watch the news and you see all this stuff blowing up and people, burning beauty shops, for heaven's sake.
Yes.
Because they're just so angry. Although it was kind of exciting when the cans of hairspray in the beauty shop were exploding.
It's crazy.
Did you see that?
It was, and folks were riding on the police cars taking
It
selfies.
sounded like
Well, but part of this is
shots
not.
going off.
It's when you see those images, it brings up historical images from, was it 92 with the Rodney King
Yeah,
riots,
yeah,
and then
and
you
the
go back into
Watts
the
riots
Watts,
and-
right? So there's kind of a long history of urban riots and American
Right.
response to these kinds of things. So this is the newest kind of iteration of it.
And part of it is when we look at these images, okay, they're there. We see things being blown up. We see unruly
See
behavior.
people behaving poorly.
Exactly. But
And,
we
then,
don't
and
have,
then I want to say, you shouldn't do that. You should behave better.
and they should.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that.
Of course.
Okay.
I'm in full agreement on that. But what we don't have is a proper lens to interpret it.
Yeah.
The question that many people don't start with, why are they doing it?
Right.
They start with the comment, they shouldn't be doing this. So yeah, they're doing things that are crazy and in the words of DMX, they're losing their minds up in there. Okay, so that's happening right now.
And some of them are clearly taking advantage of the chaos.
Of
and
course,
using it
Because
to-
they
right.
need an oil filter.
Right.
But what triggers it in the first place?
Exactly. And we have this sense of pervasive despair, hopelessness that I think many in the African American community are wrestling with at this time period. So when you look at it, okay, they feel like, where do we go when we feel injustice? Where do we go when we can't trust our system? Now, I think it's dangerous to evaluate what happened with Michael Brown or Officer Wilson. I was not there. There's other cases I would feel no problems in saying, I think this was wrong or unjust.
Right.
But dating back to 1955 with Emmett Till's assassination, where they knew who killed him and who did what, and they
Right,
didn't
right.
find anyone. Blacks have felt this pervasive sense of, we have a hard time trusting the police officers. Blacks are disproportionately targeted for things like drugs. I mean, and I mentioned this. You have blacks who use approximately 12% of the drugs in the nation, but they are arrested for 65% of the convictions on drug use. So this idea of being targeted contributes to a sense of hopelessness. And when you have that hopelessness, what do? You just react crazily, and you just start throwing things and burning things.
Right.
So-
you gave some examples of your own experiences.
Yes.
And you didn't grow up in the inner city. You weren't homeless. You had two parents. You were
Assuming he was not a
kinda
drug user or dealer.
upper middle class.
Yeah.
And where did you grow up in?
I grew up in the Plainfield.
Plainfield,
Plainfield,
okay.
Illinois.
So the distant suburbs of Chicago.
Exactly.
And yet you bumped into it
Of
yourself.
course. Well, I would argue that in some ways we might bump into it more in Plainfield, Naperville,
Okay.
Oak Brook because they're
Because you draw more attention.
exactly.
He stands out a little bit.
Are you from around here?
Oh yeah, and we didn't directly get pulled over. DWB, driving while black. So what are you doing here? What's happening?
And what was your response to those?
Did your parents ever prepare you or coach you about all that? It was-
yes.
they
Growing
knew.
up as a black man in America, and many who come from my side of the tracks will have the same experience. I was raised with the idea that you have to be twice as good to make it because you're going to be viewed with suspicion.
My dad used to tell me that too.
Did
Yeah,
you,
I mean,
did you
it's
say
so
did you say that you once had the police called because you were helping a friend move?
Yes, I did. I was held at taser point. Like I'm literally dressed like I am now. I'm dressed in a
He's got a
Ralph Lauren
polo
sweater,
on, guys. Polo.
khaki pants, dress shoes, and I'm sitting there in my car as my friend's going in. The police officer comes out. He's like, heard a report that you were robbing this place. And I'm just looking, and I had this mindset like, do you really think that there's anything here that I want to steal?
There's another reason not to help people move.
Yeah.
Not like I needed one, but
That's rough.
So you've bumped into this because honestly, I just think that can't possibly happen anymore, can it?
That's one of 4 occasions. I mean, I got pulled over I got stopped for going into my own office. It happens.
so how
Were
do
you
you
taking
respond
things from
in
yourself?
those circumstances?
When I get pulled over, I try to be as courteous as possible because you're aware that things can go down pretty quickly.
Right.
And so if I get pulled over, officer, may I grab my license now, or may I grab this? I'm just grabbing for it. And when I do, I almost get to the point of redundancy.
Have the officers always been white in those circumstances?
When I've been pulled over, yes.
Yeah.
But I would be clear on this. When we talk about prejudice against a people group or systemic racism, as I defined it, it's not just white on black.
Right.
The rap group NWA was rapping as late late 90s, late 80s, talking about it can be a black police officer who's viewing systemic racism against blacks because it's a way of thinking about a different people group. I might be talking about African Americans, and I'll just use the phrase, black folks. That's systemic racism in me because I'm still looking at them as being disproportionately likely to do something. So,
But does that mean I can't say white folk and say something critical about my tribe?
not at all.
Is that systemic racism if I say, white guys can't jump? That was a movie.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, Woody Harrelson and Wesley
with
Snipes.
Rosie Perez. I can't stand Rosie Perez.
Well, that was, I think, systemically racist.
The difference between generalizations and systemic racism
Yes,
is
help me.
systemic racism disproportionately disadvantages one group.
Okay.
So you might say white guys can't jump. Well, that in of itself, okay, that's an opinion. We might say it's a flawed opinion. I mean, David Lee would have something to say about that of the Golden State Warriors. But
Or
when
David Lee Roth of Van Halen.
He could jump pretty high with that guitar.
Jump! That was his hit
That's
song.
right.
See?
That was before his.
Sorry.
I'm more of a Motown guy myself. Now we're talking about Marvin Gaye. What's going on? Let's go. Anyway.
Okay.
If you stop letting whites on your team because you perceive that they can't jump, now we've jumped over into systemic racism. When I'm stopped disproportionately because I'm viewed as more likely, then it boils over into because then I'm being disadvantaged.
Okay.
Okay, one of the key points you made in your talk, which I highly recommend everyone go and listen to, maybe we can post the link for it.
We'll post a link.
Was that the sort of systemic racism we're now facing can't simply be solved by government or legislation.
Yes.
And I agree with you entirely there. Not that those entities don't have any responsibility.
Of course.
They do.
Of course.
But I wondered, as I was listening to your talk, how much of it is propagated by media and by whether it's popular broad cultural media or even African-American media that reinforces certain stereotypes and images of African-American communities, African-American young men, on it, which statistically aren't actually true.
True.
But the public perception
What
is
he's
such.
really asking is Tyler Perry part of the problem or part of the solution?
But you did an unscientific poll, you said, of your own students at Wheaton College, asking them what percentage of drug use in America do you think is I don't forget how you phrased it.
How many drugs, what percentage of the drugs are consumed by African Americans?
There you go. And they all gave really high.
50 to 65% was the statistic I
And
used.
in truth, as you said, it's 12%. Something
Right.
12, 15%.
Yeah.
So, but that's because public perception through media of all sorts creates an image that this is what a young black person is like.
Yes.
So what do we do about that?
I think that dates back to, the release of Birth of a Nation in the early 1900s. And you have this idea that throughout time, blacks have been portrayed in media, whether it's film, book, song, as a threat, as a danger. And so part of what we need is media that exposes people to a new perspective of African Americans. But I would say it goes beyond media, what a media can accomplish. There was a statistic, and I'm not thinking of the exact study off the top of my head, but talks about whites are the least likely group to have friends outside of their people group, outside of the white community. Well, what are you going to have to counteract the images you see on the media? Right. I mean, for me, I can laugh at a Tyler Perry comedy because I know it's just a comedy. But if that's all you're seeing of African Americans, you don't have a friend, you don't have a Theon or this person to say that's not true.
Right.
This is just comedic articulations.
Well, I used to have Bill Cosby on the Cosby Show to tell me what blacks were really like, and now I got to throw that right out the window.
Right.
Well, but wasn't that sort of the argument when President Obama was elected?
Was that he solves all of our problems with
Yeah,
race?
Well, that this represents the end of racism.
Right.
Didn't that represent the end of racism?
Absolutely not.
The president is half black.
He is.
So what's the problem?
That don't solve the problems. My brothers on the low and down and out, struggling to...
Okay, you think the solution is less in government and more in the church?
I think the government policies are limited in what they can accomplish. So one of the proposals that you'll see being advanced right now are we need to equip every police officer with a video camera.
Right.
Well, we had Rodney King being beat on camera and they were all exonerated.
Yeah,
So
that
I don't
was
really
25 years ago.
Eric Garner was on video. I mean, it's not like we don't see what's happening here.
Right.
So, I mean, that's limited. And so part of what the civil rights movement was out to accomplish was this idea of political equality under the law. And it did a great job. But what it didn't accomplish was this ability to change hearts until we start exposing one another to the humanity of the other. Exposing my white brothers and sisters to the humanity of blacks, or my black brothers and sisters to the humanity of whites. We're not going to be able to overcome this as a society. So it's not that government doesn't have any role. It does, but it's limited in its ability to bring about social transformation.
Okay, so speaking of the church's role in this.
Yes.
Lifeway just came out with an interesting survey. I don't know if you saw that this week, but they found that, this is among Protestant pastors, 77% of white pastors strongly agree that racial reconciliation is a gospel mandate.
Yes.
Okay, 77% of white pastors. Among African American pastors, it was 64%. It was less. But here's where it gets interesting. 53% of African American pastors said that they and their churches are strongly engaged in racial reconciliation, but only 32% of white pastors said that they were. So white pastors think it's more important, apparently, but are less likely to do it.
Right.
Whereas African American pastors don't necessarily think it's a gospel mandate, but are far more likely to actually be engaged in racial reconciliation.
Right.
So what does that mean for your idea that the church needs to be kind of leading in this area when
Well, but
most of them
how
aren't?
many white pastors surveyed don't actually know a black pastor?
Well, I don't know.
Or a pastor of any other race.
Or how many of them are-
Because we're all sitting in the suburbs.
Well, that's what how many of them are just in homogenous neighborhoods
Right.
or communities where
Right.
it's a non-issue?
You'll always be other if I never bump into you.
Right.
You know, did you see the movie District 9, the South African sci-fi film?
No, I did not.
It was-
I need to
I
see
know. I
that.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it's a South African director, and he retold the story of apartheid, but substituting the native Africans with aliens. So a ship crashes, an alien ship crashes, and they can't leave, and they're forced to live there among the whites of South Africa, but they're second-class citizens.
And they're put into townships.
And they're put into townships,
Okay,
and the
yes.
townships are just rife with violence. And the story is from the point of view of one of the police officers, one of the white
Okay,
South
yes.
African police officers, who
Interesting.
has to go into these townships and try to keep the peace, try to find criminals, and the relationship between the police and the aliens living in the township. And it's just fascinating to view apartheid from a perspective that is that different, where you can actually see it. It's like, wow, that's really hideous.
Right.
How did that happen? And my concern is that it seems, I don't know if did you listen to the NPR series they did on the high school in Chicago?
Some of those, yes, I listened to. Yes,
Yeah.
some, yes.
So I'm concerned that we're almost developing a permanent, subclass in the U.S. where it seems to be getting harder and harder to get out of it, harder and harder to move out of that subclass. And because that subclass isn't policed by itself,
Right.
If you're a policeman, it means you probably, even if you're an African-American policeman, it means you moved out of that subclass.
Of course, yes.
But typically in a city like Chicago, most of the police are white.
Right.
And they all have little mustaches because that's what Chicago cops look like. So you have...
I think he just still referring to the Untouchables with Sean Connery's character. That's like your stereotype of a Chicago
yes.
cop.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
it?
Good movie too.
So my concern is, because you see the same thing in Ferguson, where it's a mob, it's an angry mob that is being policed by people that aren't directly from that community. So it's other, and it makes me think more and more of the South African cops going into the townships,
Right.
to try to get these people in line. I don't know how, and I'm starting to feel less hopeful. How do you turn that around? Because when people don't feel like they have a chance
Right.
to improve, to legitimately join in the system,
Right,
to
yes.
legitimately get out of poverty, of where they are, of the cycle that they've inherited, you become disenfranchised. When you become disenfranchised, you lose hope. When you
Right.
lose hope, and you're looking at a police officer who knows nothing about you and doesn't look like you, has none of your experiences, you don't behave like you would with a peer.
Right.
Is there a question in there somewhere?
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we're headed towards almost a semi-voluntary apartheid, in America, where it's not the law technically, but it's just systemic.
Well, I think Michelle Alexander in her book calls it the new Jim Crow,
Oh,
which is a fascinating concept. Pew actually released some economic statistics recently, I think within the last week or so. And one of the things that they argued is the increasing income gap, particularly on racial lines. And so the median, not income in this part, but even wealth, like all your houses, cars, what's it all?
Right. It's
for whites,
massive.
$142,000 for whites. What do you think it is for the black community? Just give me a guess.
I think I heard this, and it's much less. I don't remember.
11,000.
Wow.
13, like whites,
Yeah.
13 times as much compared to their black counterparts.
Right.
So when you have that, and then you have a large part of the population saying, there's no inequalities that persist. You all just need to pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps, which it's fine to tell people to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps if they have bootstraps. If they don't, it's cruel.
And that was a key part of your talk, was acknowledging the need for personal responsibility.
Exactly.
And that's certainly not limited to African-American community. It's true of all communities and all people. But a call to personal responsibility does not negate the reality of systemic injustice.
Exactly. I mean, the recent Harvard study that was done where they sent the same resume out to any number of jobs, and if they could tell that it was a black person by the name, they were, less likely to get the job. So you have all these things, and it communicates a system of hopelessness. So there's no economic opportunity, because guess what? If you go into the lower income communities, you can find liquor stores, gun shops, and other things. You're not going to find a Whole Foods or a Fresh Market or a Trader Joe's.
Fruit.
You're going to find, McDonald's. So where's the opportunities for upward mobility?
So, okay, here's the question then. People always want the simple answer.
Right.
And they believe that this is a linear...
Do you have one?
Yeah, that's why we brought him on. He's got it. I'll figure it out. They want a linear response to this, that if you just solve this one piece, then everything else will fall into place.
Right. More school funding.
More school funding, or Head Start programs, or get more cops on the street, or what's the one simple thing that's going to make it all better?
Right.
And obviously it isn't that simple. But how do you begin to unravel literally centuries of entrenched, broken systems?
What can we do, Theon?
Yeah, I was down in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago at some meetings with the administration around the president's fatherlessness initiative.
Yes.
And I was with a bunch of other religious leaders, and just the statistics. And it was an African-American guy who was lecturing us and kind of telling us what was going on. And he started laying out all these statistics.
Right.
And like 74% of children born in the black community today are born to single moms. And you look around the table, and there were not too many African Americans at the table. There's a lot of other, mostly Caucasian Anglo folks and stuff. And this guy said something which was really great. He's like, "You're thinking right now, why should we care that 74% of black kids are raised in single homes?" And his response was not what I expected. I was expecting him to say something like, because school dropout rates are this high for kids who come up in single families, or incarceration or drug use, whatever. That's not what he said. What he said was, the reason you should care about this is because you look at any statistic in the African American community today, and it's a foreshadowing of what it's going to be in the white community in 20 years. And then people just kind of sat up and were like, oh, wait a minute, this is going to affect my community one day?
Right.
Now I'll care about it. But it's just a staggering reality, and not just the fatherlessness, but incarceration rates, that's the next social justice issue, I think, is really...
You're talking about the incarceration?
Yeah, prison system.
Well, I was like, it's already here.
Yeah.
We're just starting to, mainstream is starting to realize it. But
that's just horrifying. But
we have more people in prison than Iran, than Russia, than China. That's a staggering thought. Highest per capita of any industrialized nation.
Okay, so we got 4 or 5 minutes.
There's multiple entry points here, though, right?
Yes.
So what do you begin to do?
Yes, you've got a bunch of Caucasians sitting with their earbuds on the train, listening to this. When they go back to their home church, when they go back to their family, what can they do differently?
I'm going to give them 4 things to do.
4 things.
See?
Okay.
4 bullets.
Bullets, I love it.
Simple.
The first one, that if I were speaking to my Caucasian brothers and sisters, my African American brothers, my Hispanic brothers and sisters, Asian brothers and sisters, whoever I'm speaking to, understand the problem that it exists of systemic racism. By that, I would encourage 2 books. The Strange Career of Jim Crow. It will provide insight into the historical foundations of racism.
Okay.
And second, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Those are 2 works just to understanding the problem. They do a great job of outlining it. Second, do not be afraid of forming relationships with people who look different from you. So by that, many whites, evangelicals, I'll target particularly, when we interact with those who are the other, it's purely in a ministry context. So let's go to Haiti and do a missions team. Let's go to the inner city and serve at Pacific Garden Mission. Let's go to any one of these places and serve, which is great and fantastic, but stop looking down on them. Find a relationship where you're looking at them as equals.
Right.
Because when you start, that's when the stereotypes start dismantling. But whenever you go into the urban, that's just reinforcing what you already know from the media. So as long as you do that, you're not going to be able to see through some of these stereotypes. Third, be willing to have difficult conversations. Be willing to have difficult conversations. I encourage all of my students at a very Anglo-Saxon place like Wheaton College. Let's talk about affirmative action. Let's talk about poverty.
That's scary because we're just afraid we're going to step in it.
Hey, I stay silent until they say something. So
And they eventually,
oh yes,
they eventually speak.
oh yes, we have some fascinating conversations.
Okay. Because I think a lot of us, growing up white and without a lot of exposure to minority communities, we just have this kind of sense that we've been wrong for a long time, that we're guilty of some terrible things, and that it would probably be better if we just kept our mouths shut.
Right.
Because we're only going to make it worse. Can we actually make it better by opening our mouths?
Yes. Think about for many people, why are they rioting down there? It's because they feel like no one's listening to them.
Yeah.
You come to your black brother and sister and say, here's my perspective. It may be wrong, but tell me where I'm wrong. I am so excited. Like, wow, you're actually listening to me. It's just like Hagar when she's out in the wilderness. What does she say? Thou God seest me. She's like, someone actually acknowledges what I'm going through. Now, we may disagree. We may have differences of opinion. That's fine, but at least we're having the conversation and you're not just delegitimizing me saying, systemic racism doesn't exist. It's not there.
Right.
So the idea of being willing to have difficult conversations.
Okay. That was number 3.
That was number 3.
Okay. Number 4. No, Skye. No, that's not number 4.
Sorry. That was my call.
Embrace a biblical perspective of the humanity of all people. And what I mean there, I'm really coming at it from this standpoint of Genesis 9:6. What does he say in Genesis? Humans are made in the image of God.
All humans?
All are made in the image of God.
Not just Northern European?
Okay. So back, you may remember this. You were a little young, but back in the 90s, there was this huge push for so-called racial reconciliation in the church. I think a lot of it came from the Promise Keepers movement.
Yes, it did.
And then it started infiltrating all kinds of other realms of evangelicalism. I encountered it through Campus Crusade,
Yes.
and it was just different. It was like the buzz. It was all the rhetoric.
Right.
And that's 20 years ago now.
Yes.
And it all just seemed to just dissipate and evaporate. And here we are again, and I'm beginning to hear it again because of what's going on right now. But how do we make it not just another trend that doesn't result in any sticky change?
Well, and this is where this comes in right in what I'm saying right now. One of the failures of the Promise Keeper, not Promise Keepers as a movement, when it talks about race, is they really use the language of racial reconciliation. Well, as long as we use you're of a different race than me, we have a no-go. Because what does race assert? It's a fundamental biological difference. We're starting behind the 8 ball.
So would you go with the school of thought that says race is actually a social construct rather
Absolutely.
rather than a biological or inherently...
So that doesn't mean that we
right.
don't identify differences, but the differences that we see, it's just like a Carlton Banks from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Okay, he acts in what we call a very white ethnic way. Or Eminem.
Now you're talking my language.
Or an
Fresh
Eminem.
Prince.
You know what they call them in the Indian community?
What?
Coconuts.
Really?
Yeah.
They're white on the inside?
They're brown on the outside.
Not
and white on
Oreos?
the inside. No, they're coconuts.
Coconuts.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or like an Oreo in the black community.
Yeah.
Or you have an Eminem who acts in a very African-American ethnic culture,
Right.
but that gives us an entry point to discuss the differences that we see. Because as long as I view it as you're fundamentally different than me, then I can't talk about you and your kind without being threatening. If we start from this standpoint, we're all created in the image of God. I might not understand, but it's like we have a common maker. And we start with that commonality, and I think that's where some of the racial reconciliation, it has not adopted the language of a social construction.
But that's different than the colorblind rhetoric.
Oh my goodness, the colorblind rhetoric is ridiculous.
Because then that's not acknowledging the fact that there are differences
Right.
and honoring them
Yes.
at times. But so
I do want to distinguish myself.
Do you think it's? I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but I'm curious about this. Do you think it's the fact that we tend to worship apart on Sunday morning? There's the argument, well, that's the worst kind of racism when it divides the church. There's also the argument but there's such richness in the African-American heritage of worship, that if you take a big white church and a big black church and you put them together, typically the white traditions win.
Right.
And you lose some of the richness of black traditions. So when do you say, hey, we should all be together and pretend like we all like the exact same stuff versus, wow, I love the heritage of my tradition?
Can I ask you a question, Phil?
Yes.
You have a brother, right?
I do.
Do you and your brother like different things?
We do.
What happens when you like different things?
He moved to Minnesota. I don't really see him anymore.
I have a brother. We like different things. Guess what?
Yeah.
Because we like different things, we tolerate different things because my brother likes that or I like it
Okay.
and I'm his brother.
Okay.
If we see ourselves as fundamentally family, guess what? We may have a different way of doing
See,
something.
but that you're asking us to sacrifice. That's not fair.
We don't sacrifice for family. You're
No, but I mean that's really what it does come down to is honoring one another and sacrificing. Consider others better than yourself. All these
Right.
wonderful callings of the New Testament.
And I think the goal of having churches that are 50-50 split or 30-30-30 split, that's a faulty goal.
Yeah.
Our goal is that our churches reflect the demographics of the community in which they live.
Yeah.
That's our goal. And to the extent that
So
we
you
need to...
don't, you're not in favor of forced church busing?
Lord help us, please. We need you.
Okay.
Scratch the surface. We just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we just scratched surface. Is that good? Would you be willing to come back sometime?
Always.
Okay, awesome.
be with you.
Right down the street. Thanks, Theon. I got to summarize race relations with a song.
On an instrument that no race wants to claim.
What are you saying? What are you saying about
What?
the ukulele?
The ukulele does not feature in a central role in any ethnic religious ceremony, does it?
No.
Because nobody wants it except hobbits.
Have you ever seen a
And
worship?
Eugene from another show.
What's that?
Adventures in a Place. Odyssey.
Okay. Oh, Adventures in Odyssey.
Exactly. I don't know if I can mention that.
You can mention that. That's okay. He has a ukulele?
Yes,
Eugene
he does.
has a ukulele?
He does.
Really? I don't know.
It's like one of his characters.
Theon
key
was
thing.
homeschooled.
Wow. Wow.
Were you homeschooled?
I mean, I was homeschooled, but that's not why I know about Adventures in Odyssey. I mean, come on. Player hating. Goodness. I ain't coming back.
Hey, Theon, you are an oddity. As a fan of Adventures in Odyssey. Glad you like the ukulele, though it's not really kind of an African-American instrument, but we'll learn to get along, and then we can all sing the reconciliation song right after I've written it, and I'll mail it along to all my different friends, because in the end the differences end when I remember that God made us all the same. I ran out.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sometimes that happens.
I'll just say happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
See you in January.
Whether you're an atheist or a satanist or whatever you are, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you next year. Thanks, Theon.
Thank you for having me.